Hello and welcome to The Talk, hosted by me, Marc Tabales. Over the last week, we had a interesting turn of events with the NFL. Not to mention the new president's LGBTQ military ban is still on the horizon. And we talk about what can and can't be said on TV. Let's get started right here. It's time for The Talk. So with the latest NFL protest, we have yet again jumped into this mess of, is it okay to protest this way, or is it disrespectful to those who fought for this country? Joining me today is
Ben Mojica.
Dan.
Ben Martin.
I guess let's kick it off with, what do you have to say to these NFL players?
Well, let me just start by saying I think they do have the right to protest. They definitely do have the right. But you also got to keep in mind that these are millionaires. They're getting paid millions of dollars to play a game.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Just because they're getting paid doesn't mean they waive their right to protest an injustice, especially since it's not like it's something that they've been doing for decades and decades. I mean, it hasn't been the standard to stand for the national anthem for the teams for the entire history of the NFL. That's a relatively new thing.
So, just to clear it all up, you okay with the protest?
Absolutely.
I am okay with the protest. I think they definitely do have a right to do it, although I do think it is a little disrespectful to do so.
Okay.
After all, this country is giving them the opportunity to, get millions of dollars by playing a game. But they definitely do have the right to do it.
Okay, so I guess then, going out to both of you, my next question would be, when is this considered too much?
I think it's already kind of been taken out. I think it's already been out of control. I think we got bigger things to worry about, like this whole crisis with North Korea. We got so much more to worry about. You got to wonder if this is like being used to distract us from something. Like, this has just gotten so out of hand.
Well, I don't know about that, because I think that there's serious injustice problems in our country, and somebody really has to do something about it. I'm proud that there are athletes who are standing up for their rights. I think it's important.
Now, with both that being said, I have an article here from the New York Times where they talk about, Black Lives Matter and Black Justice are starting to worry that the kneeling is more or less overshadowing the real issue, which is Black Lives Matter and Black Justice. And they feel as though this is popping up more in the media, than the real issue.
I mean, I think there are kind of two separate issues here. It all started with Colin Kaepernick. He was kind of protesting police brutality, but now it's kind of turned into something else. Now they're protesting what the president has said, but they're just doing the same thing, but for two totally different reasons.
I think that as long as it all comes back to what the real issue is, then that's what's important. And honestly, I think they need to take these protests a step further. I think they need to be more vocal verbally about what the real issues are, because it's not just the president. I mean, there's a serious police brutality issue in our country, and somebody needs to talk about it.
I'm not sure if they actually need to vocalize it more, because right now they kind of have everyone's attention. You go on Facebook, the first thing you're going to see is something about, kneeling for the anthem. They already have everyone's attention. So I don't know if they need to be any more vocal about it than they already are.
Well, I think the point is that they have everybody's attention, so why don't they use it? Kneeling, what does kneeling say? It says that there's a problem, and, we stand for something, but it doesn't say what they stand for. I think they need to be vocal about it.
Now, going along with the other side of this issue, I have a little quote here from Fox News Insider. They interviewed somebody concerning what's been happening over the past week, and they said, we all should stand for the flag. This is America. I took 3 shots for this country, and I still stand for the flag. Now, this is a veteran talking. Obviously, they've done their service for this country. What do you think about vets and how they're feeling about this right now, because this is, again, they did fight for the country, and they're feeling very disrespected right now.
Well, when they fight for the country, I think they also fight for the right for, citizens to protest the country. I think, if you're happy with the country, if you're pretty satisfied with it, and you're totally able to stand up for the anthem, yeah, stand up for it. But if you have a serious issue with the country, then it's definitely your right to protest it. That's what the soldiers fought for, was your right to protest it.
I mean, I have personal friends who are veterans who are absolutely supportive of the protest. And one of the things that they always say is that the flag isn't America, and my service to America isn't representative of America is perfect in every single way. There are problems, and you can be a veteran and you can love our country and still think there are problems and want to fix them.
I agree.
Oh, that's well said. Well, moving on to the last question I have on this topic is, do you think there's more important things we should be talking about in the news right now? I mean, with everything happening in Houston, Florida, Puerto Rico, and
Definitely. I said it before too, the whole crisis with North Korea going on. I think that's really a lot more important. That's a lot more, that affects the whole world. It's a little more global right now. Yes, there are injustices that are going on here, but next to that, I feel like those are rather insignificant. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be addressed. I'm just saying next to that, I feel like they're rather insignificant.
Okay, so I'm going to hold you to that real quick. Okay. What do you think garners so much attention for this subject rather than everything else? We have a lot of issues to deal with right now. Why do you think this is getting so much attention?
The NFL players kneeling?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just gotten so much media attention. I feel like it does come down to the media, and you see players during the national anthem during a football game, and they're getting tons of camera action. That's exactly what they're just. They have everybody's attention. That's what everybody's talking about. Again, you go on Facebook, and that's the first thing you're going to see is something pertaining to that. They already have so much attention. They're pretty much monopolizing the media at this point.
Well, I think there's something distinctly American about football. I think
Okay.
the average person at home can really identify with their favorite NFL sports, stars, and I think that might have something to do with it. Now, I read the news every morning. I'm a big fan of the New York Times, and in my daily briefings, I don't just see the NFL stuff. I mean, the North Korea, the Puerto Rico, the hurricanes, this weather, I see that every day, and I avidly consume that. That's what I look for. So I don't know if it's overshadowing it in every aspect of the media, but it is definitely hot talk.
I think it also has to do with something with tradition too. For so many years now, for decades now, the NFL has been playing, with the national anthem, and everyone's been standing for that. It's been like that for so long, and now that we're starting to notice some of the imperfections in our country, people are not okay with that. So I think it's the fact that we've been doing this for so long, and this is so sudden to some people that it's got everyone's attention.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, you two. Let's move on to the next topic. Transgender military ban. Okay. It's set to go into effect January 1st, 2018. What are some of your initial thoughts on the military ban, transgender military ban?
Well, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I do think the military has the right to do it. The military has the right to pretty much accept and deny whoever they want. I can't join the military right now because I'm overweight. They can kind of do this to whoever they want. I'm not saying it's right, but they definitely have the right to do it.
But when does it stop? To me, this just seems like a stepping stone to discriminating against marginalized groups, right? I mean, the LGBT community, and including transgender people, when we can continue? When does it stop being transgender people and start being, gay people, start being black people? When, I don't want this to continue in my military because there's no grounds for it.
I feel like we've already been there too, where we used to discriminate in the military against gay people and black people, and we've already moved on from that. I don't think there's any point where we can go back and do that, though. I could be wrong. I really could be wrong, but I just don't think it's going to go back to that point.
I feel like that's exactly what's happening with this ban. I think that's the whole point.
Well, let me read you a little clip from the statement. This is off the official White House Gov. Sorry, just give me 1 second here. In my judgment, the previous administration failed to identify a sufficient basis. By previous administration, I mean the Obama administration, to conclude that terminating the department's long-standing policy and practice would not hinder military effectiveness and lethality, and being lethal. This long-standing policy they're talking about is, of course, denying transgender health and even denying them into the military service. President Trump seems to think that for some reason it wouldn't make them as lethal or as effective. Now, what are your thoughts on that?
This one's kind of tough for me. I think that does kind of depend. I think there are definitely transsexual people out there that are more than capable of defending our country, but there also have been several studies that have come out saying that those people are not mentally well. Like, I think we need to do more research on that. Like, I think it's definitely worth getting into the research on that one, because if they're definitely capable of defending our country, we should let them.
Well, it sounds to me like their argument is that we can ban transgender people because it's not going to affect our military. And yeah, there aren't a large proportion of transgender people in the military compared to your average dude. Mm-hmm. But I think it goes beyond just how effective our military is, because our military is part of what represents our country. And if we're denying people access, American citizens who want to serve for our country, I think that hurts morale. I think that sets a bad example.
Now, going along with this and talking about effectiveness and how lethal we are, obviously, if you ever heard people talk about it, one of the big things about war is how much fear you can bring to the table, how intimidating you look straight out of the bat. Now, I think the real question that has to be asked is, do we still look intimidating? Even though countries know that we have transgender people out there, I personally think they can serve either which way, and I've seen some very scary people everywhere, so.
That's definitely a really good point. If America cut down its military funds by 85%, we would still be the most funded military in the whole world. And I think that says a lot right there. Like, that's with or without transsexuals. Now, I think, if we add transsexuals to that, we're still going to be the most funded military in the world. So, yeah, we'd still be just as intimidating. So.
Well, I feel like it goes beyond just gender. I don't think gender is synonymous with fear. You don't have to be a biological man to be scary. And, I've seen some scary women, and I've seen some scary transgender women, and I've seen some scary transgender men. I think that it's a moot point.
Okay. And then what would you say to some of these troops that obviously January 1st is right around the corner, only in a couple months, and if nobody stands up, if nobody stops this, their medical needs are going to be cut off completely. So what would you say to some of these troops?
I honestly don't know what I would say. Like, it's honestly hard to think about. I think like if they're definitely mentally well, they should be allowed to. But it's hard for me to say. I know this is coming up right on January 1st when it takes into effect, but it's honestly kind of hard for me to think about at this point. I definitely want to help them out though, but I'm honestly just not quite sure how.
I mean, I think the first thing I'd want to say is just to stay strong. There are tons of people who are out there who are behind you, and I consider myself one of them. And maybe the administration isn't, but that doesn't mean that there aren't people supporting you.
Okay, yeah, something like that. Maybe something small like that could go a long way. Maybe I would do that.
Now, before we hop off this topic, there was something that you brought up before we actually began, which is you're saying the military in large numbers will not enforce this on January 1st, come January 1st.
Yeah, I'm not 100% certain on the facts, but I do remember around the time that the transgender ban was initially announced via Twitter, I remember there was some pretty fast backlash by the Joint Chiefs of the military saying that they didn't approve, and I vaguely remember that it was possible that they didn't want to necessarily enforce that ban. I don't know. I don't have the articles in front of me, but...
Now, before we continue, this is going on to a bigger topic, which we're going to keep very brief. If the military decides to effectively not enforce any of the transgender ban, healthcare, any of it, how would this look on the president? Well, I mean, this is essentially the military not serving its commander-in-chief, not listening to its commander-in-chief. So how would this look on them?
I think this would say a lot about, Trump's presidency. He's already not a very popular guy right now. I think this would just take that even a step further, that not even his own subordinates want to actually do what he says.
Yeah, I wonder, because it seems that during this administration, one scandal after another has just popped up, and it seems to roll right off of him. I mean, there are things that have been said and done in this presidency that earlier presidents would have resigned over.
Right.
I mean, I think that, it's not going to reflect well on him, but is it really going to matter, is my question.
You don't think it's going to stop the ball from rolling?
Oh, no, honestly, it hasn't. Nothing's stopped the ball from rolling yet. We still get an endless barrage of Twitter nonsense.
I don't know.
every day.
But part of me thinks that maybe it could stop the ball from rolling, because this is the military, after all. This is America's military. This is what we're putting a lot of our money into. And if they're really having an issue with their commander-in-chief, then they might be able to actually do something about it.
Okay. All right. And just to finish off, I give you my final thoughts. Not on the military or anything. If you're out there listening, Trump, I just feel bad for your press secretary. It's only been a few months, and she looked like she's gone through about 20 years already. Sorry, but going on to our next topic. What can and can't we discuss on TV? What's appropriate for TV? We're going to have to keep this brief, but we're going to be looking at more stand-up comics, okay? And what can and can't be said. What's considered a joke and what's completely not okay to say.
Anything up to the extremes, I think. The extremes being like, rape, that kind of stuff. That shouldn't be a matter of joking, because that's still, that's a very traumatic thing for people to go through, and it's not really something I don't think that should be joked about, But everything up until those extremes, I think, can maybe be joked about.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you a little example. Dave Chappelle recently came back, did in my opinion, wonderful stand-up. Netflix did 2 of them. However, he did mention the LGBTQ community quite a bit. And one thing I definitely remember is he was talking about a protest that the LGBT community was doing about certain words, the marriage licenses. Husband, wife, what do you do for certain gay couples that may have 2 wives or 2 husbands? And I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said, go outside and whichever one's gayer, that's the wife. Now, obviously, he was making a joke, but people definitely got upset about this. And so what are your thoughts on that? Did he go too far?
Again, I think it's just a joke. I don't really think he went too far here.
Well, personally, I'm pretty generally against the notions of censorship in the media. However, I do think there's a point where we need to understand that there are jokes that aren't helpful, and they perpetuate, stereotypes and negative feelings. And it's not just about, hurting somebody's feelings. It's about perpetuating the notion of that it's okay to do that.
Okay. Now, before I'm going to hold you to this. Before we go on to our next question, he also did mention after he said that statement, again paraphrasing here, that it was hard for a black man in America, and that Martin Luther, 1960s. Unfortunately, he got called the N-word in traffic last week. And to a sense, it is a joke, but it's also very true. Hey, these things, these issues are coming about, and we're talking about them a lot, but we can't just pretend like everybody's okay with it. And is he bringing more awareness to the issue, or is he making it worse?
I really wonder about that, because I think it's really important that he brings it up. And we have established in our society a culture amongst young black men that is squarely homophobic, and they're one of the most oppressed groups in our country. It's just a fact. Racism is still very prevalent. But because of the culture that we've established, it's hard to talk about like homophobia and LGBT rights with somebody who's been raised their whole life to have a certain kind of opinion. And I think it's important that we all come together and realize that, no, it's not okay to call somebody the N-word, even if it's a joke, because we want to abolish racism. We want it removed from our society, just like we want to remove homophobia, or at least I do.
Okay.
As much as I want to like remove racism and homophobia in this country, I just don't think that's possible. We're always going to have that one small group that's going to be racist or homophobic. And now I think those numbers they're fairly small in this country. Now I could be wrong, but I think definitely, I'm not denying that racism and homophobia, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. It's definitely out there. It'd be foolish to say that it didn't. But I just wonder like how much of the population actually is racist or homophobic.
Well, if you ask me, I think we found out in this election how much of the country is actually racist or homophobic. And I know those are some bold words, but to be honest with you, I see it every single day. You know, I'm raised mixed heritage. I'm a half Hispanic, half white, and I grew up with racism. I experienced it my whole life. So I know it's out there. And I think it's important that we acknowledge it, because it's not about removing all of the racist people. It's about removing the systemic racism. It's about removing the racist society. It's about changing the police brutality, changing the way our president talks about people in our country and people out of our country.
Yeah. Now, just going off what you said for a minute, a personal note about that. I don't disagree with you. I think one of the biggest issues in this country is that in front of public, when we're out amongst people, amongst our friends, we'll be supportive of almost everything. But it's really behind closed doors. What do you say? And I think behind closed doors, many people feel very, very, very differently than whatever they will say in public. And, you know, when it comes down to it, you know, you don't have to disclose what you vote for or, you know, who you vote for. So you could say one thing in public and be completely different behind closed doors. And that's a real issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You have any closing comments on that one?
Well, that's definitely true. What you say behind closed doors definitely is a lot different from out in public. It's like when I'm with my friends, I could say some really terrible things, but they know I'm joking. Out there in the world, like to some stranger, they wouldn't know that I'm joking. So you definitely got to be a lot more careful to what you say to the people that you don't know than the people that you do know. When you talk to people that you know, you're fairly safe because they know you, but they don't out there.
Well, I think, you know, even just looking on the internet, I don't know if you've ever spent time in forums on Reddit or anything like that, or even just in YouTube comments. I mean, things that people will say when, you know, they're behind closed doors, so to speak, when they're behind the anonymity of a username. I mean, I think it really speaks to the kind of issues that we have in our world internationally with racism, nationalism, homophobia, and all of these things.
No, we actually are running out of time, but just to close, personally for me, that is why I've always loved comics. They bring real issues to the front by using jokes, but hey, these are real issues. Homophobia, that's a real issue. And whether you agree with it or not, hey, Dave Chappelle got people talking about it. Black and white relations, especially a lot of black comics, they talk about this. Hey, you don't always agree with them, but guess what? Now you're talking about it. And I remember specifically 9/11 was such a hard topic to talk about. But I remember one of the first people going out there and talking about it were actually stand-up comics. And they were going and they were making jokes. And sometimes, you know, entire theaters full of places would boo them off the stage. But they would go and they would keep making these jokes. And eventually everybody got comfortable talking about it again. But I think that is all the time we have today. My producer's telling me to wrap it up. So thank you, the audience, for your time today. And remember what you heard here today. And be active in these discussions, please. That's what we need. This is Marc Tabales from The Talk, signing off.